Hello and gents, welcome to CG Reaction, and this is the Falklands Mini War Part 1 by the channel Oversimplified. Yeah, another Oversimplified video. This is an awesome channel. Every time he uploads a video, it's always in the top 3 top trending videos. So, it's one of the great animated channels out there. So yeah, Falklands. I remember, the Ricky Gervais jokes about this, that he's like, he was saying like we as he was saying we as British, we are going to the war against Argentina. Why not? And that was just damn funny. Like, yeah, that is true, isn't it? British going against Argentina. I don't know backstory behind that, but it's funny when you think about it. Like, British are going against Argentina because before it was always with superpowers like America and different major countries. We're going against Argentina, I guess. He said that we had the cannon that can shoot up. I think it was 17 miles or something, and Argentina had the cannons that can shoot 9 miles. So we just parked our boats at 10-11 miles and just shelled the shit out of the city. And that was just damn funny the way he said it. It is weird to see that Argentina fought against Britain. I mean, like, okay. So this is about Falklands. Obviously, I remember the Top Gear thing where they, came after, the Clarkson and the, Top Gear people. I think they were in Argentina at the time. So, yeah. But Falklands is still a British colony, right? Yeah, so I guess, Argentinians fought for the Falkland. They lost. And the Top Gear people went to Argentina. The veterans of that war thought that they were mocking them or something. Or maybe they were. Jeremy Clarkson can be an a-hole, but still it was subtle. You can't attack somebody for subtleness. But yeah, so they were attacked. It was pretty effed up thing actually. But yeah, let's watch this one.
Hi, English Mariner John Strong. Hi, Anthony Carey, 5th Viscount of Falkland. I would very much like for you to go to Chile and locate the wreck of a Spanish treasure ship for me. Okay. Hey, I found some islands.
Simple as that.
The English were probably not the first to discover the Falklands, but they were the first to write it down. They found it to be cold, wet, and miserable, just like home. So they established a colony in 1765, unaware that the French had also discovered the islands and done the same a year earlier. And for a while the two were unaware of each other's existence until presumably there was an awkward moment where they ran into each other. Then the Spanish showed up and told the French that a couple hundred years earlier the Pope drew a line on...
Damn, that really happened. This is something. At the time, they were, navigating different places. So it's weird to see in such a small island. It's not that small, but still. French were already there and they didn't even know about each other. They didn't do reconnaissance. I think they just thought like, nobody else is going to be here. This is way down south, so we probably are the first, and just went with it. One day they just, got in front of each other like, what are you doing here? What am I doing here? What are you doing here?
on a map and said all of this belongs to Portugal and all of this belongs to Spain, and that the island was in Spain's territory and they would like the French to hand over their settlement. Now, since the two were good friends and Spain was willing to pay in cash money, the French obliged. But since they were still a little bitter about the recent 7 Years' War thing, they made sure to warn the Spanish not to let those dirty English on the other side of the island take over. So Spain went over to the English and explained, "Pope, line on map, Spain's island." And the English said, "Yeah, right, this is our island." But the Spanish had more...
Of course, we are going to, recognize the authority of the Pope. We did not create Church of England opposing that. Of course, we respect the Pope. We're gonna go just because Pope said so. That's what British is gonna say.
Guns, so they kicked them off anyway. But then England threatened to go to war. So Spain went to their friends in France and said, "Hey, it looks like stuff is about to go down. You in on this?" And the French Minister of War said, "Yeah, and we'll launch a full-scale invasion of England and party like it's 1066. But then King Louis XV said, "1, you're insane, and 2, you're fired. Sorry, Spain, we're not ready for a war right now." So Spain had to give the English their settlement back, saying it's still our island, and the English said, "No, it's our island." Then some colonists in North America got a bit rowdy, so the English had to leave their settlement to go focus on that, but they left behind a plaque that said this is totally still our island. So the island was in Spanish hands, but then a French guy...
It's awesome. They're like, yeah, we're the British. Fuck yeah, we got this. So suddenly the message arrived. Yeah, Americans are not liking their taxes. There's an issue there. It's like, God damn it. All right, we'll be back. I just went away.
No, not that one. That one turned on the Spanish, took over most of the country, and captured King Ferdinand VII. And in response, the Spanish colonies in South America started vying for independence. So Spain had a little bit on its hands and also had to leave the islands. And for a couple decades, the islands were left uninhabited except for the penguins, some fishermen, and the gauchos, which are basically like cowboys but cooler and Spanisher. A merchant from Hamburg living in the now independent United Provinces of the Rio de la Plata heard about the feral cattle roaming the Falklands and thought it would be a good way to make some money. So he got permission from both Buenos Aires and the British government to set up trade there as a private venture. Some American ships came down and began hunting whales and seals around the islands, and Verney wasn't too happy about it. So he asked Buenos Aires for some military assistance in defending the islands, but Buenos Aires said, meh, do it yourself, gave him some weapons, and appointed him governor of the islands. So he seized the US ships and arrested their crews. In response, two things happened. First, America came down and said, nice settlement you have there. Would be a shame if someone destroyed it. And then they destroyed it.
After American Revolution, Americans were just, even though at the start they were not the powerhouse, but they were already on the way of becoming it, so they were already on the roll. So at that time, messing with the Americans, capturing the ship is like, what you did? You capture our ship? Just bomb the shit out of the entire town. This is heavy. This is the first time when people start to learn, like, yeah, it's not just a revolution. Let's not fuck with Americans, eh?
Second, Britain heard Verney had been appointed governor, meaning the United Provinces, actually now the Argentine Confederation, were officially claiming the islands as theirs. So Britain showed up and said, hey, didn't you see our plaque? And since they had more guns, they kicked them off the island. And the Falklands remained firmly in British hands for the next century. They officially became a crown colony in 1840. Port Stanley became the island's capital in 1845. The cattle hides from the island weren't worth much, so they imported sheep from Britain in 1851. 2 world wars came and went, and all this time the Argentinians never rescinded their claim over the islands. Now it's 1976, and after a couple civil wars, a new brutal military dictatorship sponsored by the US fight against communism has taken control in Argentina. And by 1981, this guy was in power. The economy had been struggling for a long
Cold War had effect long distances. Everybody was afraid of everybody. America was afraid of, basically, everybody becoming like Russia. So they paid lots of people just to stay in power, and that's lots of weird shit. It spread out way far distances.
Long time, and Galtieri had been unable to improve the situation. Now, if you ever find yourself the brutal military leader of a struggling South American country and you start getting into hot water, here's a bit of advice that has been tried and tested throughout the centuries. Start a war to distract everyone from their misery. Galtieri knew how popular he would be if he could finally take back Argentina's last Malvinas from the occupying British. There had been proposals to cut British military spending, and the ice patrol vessel HMS Endurance had been withdrawn from the area. So the Argentinians assumed the British may not even bother doing anything about the invasion. After easily capturing the largely uninhabited South Georgia island, 600 Argentine troops were sent to the Falklands. The small number of Royal Marines and other British forces stationed there put up a small amount of resistance, but in the end had to surrender to the larger Argentine force. Crowds in Argentina celebrated the news, but they were wrong to assume the British would do nothing, because the person in charge of the United Kingdom at the time was this lady. Thatcher was a somewhat controversial prime minister, but whether you loved her or hated her, there was no denying that she was tough. Like metal. Iron, for example. She immediately declared an exclusion zone around the islands and organized for a task force of over 100 ships to set sail for the Falklands. The United Nations expressed concern at the Argentine invasion. All South American nations apart from Chile backed
Yeah, going to war against Britain at any time is risky because their navy has always been stronger. So they could just starve you out if you're talking about an island. Falklands is an island, so of course Britain is going to have an upper hand because they have a powerful navy.
Argentina. And since the United States had propped up the Argentine dictatorship, Reagan went to Thatcher and said, could you maybe just let them have the islands? And Thatcher said no. Okay, here, have some weapons. Fighting a war over 8,000 miles from home was a logistical challenge for the British. They requisitioned civilian cruise ships and containers, and they used British-owned Ascension Island as a forward base. By the time they arrived at the Falklands in May, the Argentine forces had had time to entrench themselves. The first task for the British was to gain control of the seas, which they did easily. On the 2nd of May, a British submarine sank an Argentine cruiser. The sinking was controversial, as it occurred outside the British exclusion zone. It was also the largest loss of life in a single incident during the war. And in response, the Argentine...
Controversial in which side? In England or in Argentina? Because if it's in Argentina, it's weird. I mean, yeah, they declare this, this particular zone, but it's up to Britain. They could say, screw it, zone is bigger. If it's inside the Britain, like this is not up to ethics or something, I understand that.
The Navy withdrew from the islands. The next task for the British was to gain air superiority. While the Argentine Air Force controlled the skies, they were able to inflict considerable damage on the Royal Navy below. Days after the sinking of the General Belgrano, 2 Argentine super-étendards carried out a raid on the HMS Sheffield and sank it with an Exocet missile. For weeks, the Argentine Air Force would continue to carry out raids and inflict heavy casualties on the Royal Navy, with British Sea Harriers doing their best to take out as many of the Argentine aircraft as they could. While the battle in the skies raged on, San Carlos was chosen as the best landing site for the British ground forces. An essay SAS raid took out Argentine defenses on Pebble Island, and the HMS Alacrity sailed through Falklands Sound to flush out any Argentine supply ships. The landings began on May 21st, with Argentine aircraft carrying out full-scale raids on the task force ships taking part in the landing, damaging several and sinking a few, but anti-aircraft cannons and sea harriers shot down many of the aircraft in what became a major turning point for air superiority, and a beachhead was successfully formed. Then the ground troops began their movements out of San Carlos, across the north towards Stanley, and south toward the Argentine stronghold at Goose Green.
British has, long, experience of how to fight a war. So their just tactics alone is dangerous. And British is already powerful at this time against Argentina, definitely. So this was a losing battle for Argentina from the start.
In the following battles, a clear trend emerged. The Argentine conscripts put up a good fight, and with the rough, muddy terrain, the war was by no means easy for the British. But with highly skilled Royal Marine commanders and parachute regiment troops, the British would often find themselves taking on larger numbers of Argentinian soldiers, but would still come out victorious with minimal casualties. The 14-hour-long battle for Goose Green commenced on the night of May 28th. The
British are level 50 and Argentinians are level 18 or something.
The battle ended in a decisive British victory, with over 900 Argentinians surrendering. Then, with 5,000 reinforcements arriving from the 5th Infantry Brigade, the British started preparing for their final assault on Stanley. In a series of hard-fought battles, they took control of the hills and mountains surrounding the town, as the Argentine forces withdrew, with British ships shelling their positions from offshore. Utterly surrounded, on the 14th of June, the Argentinians surrendered, and the war was over. The 2-month-long war claimed hundreds of lives and left the islands strewn with minefields that still pose a problem to this day. Argentina still claims the islands, but in 2013 a referendum was held and the islanders voted 99.8% in favor of remaining
There
British.
you go.
Plus, oil was just found near the islands, so the British probably aren't going to give them up anytime soon.
Yeah, Argentina can claim anything they want. If the people on the island says that we are British had control over this island for a long time. It's British island, man, regardless of what you say.
Soon.
Yeah, there was obviously there was a losing battle for Argentina from the start. You can't go against British, man. Come on. So yeah, there was something. I thought it would be British would be the aggressors, I guess, but it's not really. I mean, this is time of European colonization. They were going in different places. Then British already arrived on those islands, then went back. Some Argentinians thought, what, I'm going to take this island back. Of course, that's not going to work against Britain. So yeah, they lost. That's why they fought the war. Ricky Gervais has made a joke, but at the time, what? British just decided to go against Argentina. No, it wasn't like that. There was one of the islands that, they took during the colonization period a few centuries ago. And then Argentinians tried to take back, so that's why the war happened. Alright, people, that was the Falklands. If you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe. Check out other reaction. There's a link in the description. Check out the cast for all the playlists. Check out the end cards. And I'll see you next time.